set, hut, hut.
As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sounds of Golden Blue football.
Almost heaven, West Virginia.
Now let's bring on the Mountaineers. Goes around about the 15 to 10 to 5. A touchdown, West Virginia. He did it.
He did it. Patrick White. Touchdown, Tay Von Austin.
The Don Nehlen's Mountaineers enjoy walking in where angels feared to tread.
I think you think that these guys are going to fall over dead for you. Well, I got news for you. They're going to punch you right in the mouth. It's Mountaineer pride.
Nothing cheap, nothing dirty, but West Virginia football. West Virginia football.
We've no doubt tonight they shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue. Not this night.
They've done it. They've done it. A perfect season. And the Mountaineers, for the first time in history, undefeated and untied.
Don Nehlen and his Mountaineers, for the second time, have finished a regular season with an unblemished mark.
Ain't no stopping the Golden Blue.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into another live stream here on the Country Roads webcast, March 25th edition, as the WVU coaching search continues, and I think we're drawing near to a conclusion now. We've got some really good reports that have came out since last night and some developments over the last 24 hours that really point in that direction, and we'll talk about that and who may be the final names here that's in consideration for this job. Got some updates of guys that have taken other jobs that we were still talking about and considering candidates in yesterday's update, so we'll lead off with that momentarily. This will probably be the first of a couple live streams today at least. I think the football team's practicing today. I believe Rich Rod will be meeting with the media again, so I'll try and watch that, take some notes, and come back and do another live stream, talk a bit more football later in the day, but this one, of course, will be focused on and centered in on the basketball coaching search as I try and give you guys updates on reports as they come out and try and let you guys know where things stand. Been daily here throughout this search, and we'll continue to do that as it progresses, but should be wrapping up here, I'd say, in the next 24 hours or so, hopefully. We'll see what happens there. Depends on how some things play out, but let's first talk about who's off the board that was, previously mentioned as a candidate in our last stream to kind of update you guys with where things stand currently, and then we'll talk about what may be the final two, or at least the prohibitive top two names right now that it seems like this thing may be down to for West Virginia. But yesterday we had some interesting developments, because the first report that we had was that Brian Hodgson, who, was a candidate that I did like and I was a big fan of. You guys have heard me talk about him a ton. One of the best recruiters in college basketball. When he was assistant at Alabama, did a great job at Arkansas State. He was being tied to the UNLV job, so everyone's like, okay, well, he's heading to UNLV. On 3 reporting, he's emerged as the top target there. Deal expected to come together soon, so we're like, okay, heading to UNLV. But then, funny enough, lo and behold, later in the day, it comes out, not indeed the case, at least not at UNLV, as he actually ends up at South Florida. Just a funny development here, very interesting. 6-year deal for Brian Hodgson, so he is off the board, but it's not UNLV, it's actually South Florida there, the former Alabama assistant, current Arkansas State head coach, out of the mix at WVU. And how did that happen? Well, we got the report here from Mike Cooper from UNLV that kind of shared this, which is very interesting. UNLV had him in the building. The media lined up, the buzz was real, and still lost him to USF. Why? Because NIL at UNLV was not close to what he needed. No booster push, no real juice behind the scenes. So that just goes to show you how important NIL is, how important, fundraising boosters are in today's day and age, because he was literally heading to UNLV until that happened. Turns the corner, ends up at USF. But regardless, for our search purposes here at WVU, He's off the board, so we knew we had, some other candidates that we were still left looking at after Hodgson was off the board. We knew Calhoun was involved. We knew Chester Frazier was involved. We knew Ross Hodge was involved from North Texas. And, of course, yesterday we reported, courtesy of 247 Sports, who was the first to put the name out, and then it started coming out other places as well, Steve Forbes of Wake Forest in the mix as well. Now, since then, what I've come to learn is that it appears Chester Frazier will not be getting the job at WVU. And then Jared Calhoun, I think, is leaning towards staying at Utah State, according to reports. And, got to credit Mike Kazaza and 247 Sports. They've always on top of these coaching searches. They do a great job covering that thing. So he was the first one that I saw that had these two names as kind of the top two names. I think they may have came out other places right now, but it appears that West Virginia down to kind of two names, as he said, everything is shrinking, and these two names are standing tall. And so the two names that we're looking at now that are most likely, I don't know if you can necessarily call them the final two, but definitely the top two that will probably have the greatest chance to get this WVU job, Ross Hodge and Steve Forbes. As I said, Calhoun seems to be a little bit out of the mix here. According to that report, same report from Mike Kazaza was talking about it, said that the day has moved away from Jared Calhoun. So seems like Calhoun, there was reports previously. I shared, some tweets of a guy that was on a flight with him, and he had told that guy that he was trying to work out the extension with Utah State. Seems that may indeed be real, and he may end up actually staying at Utah State despite, getting some heat for other jobs. I know he interviewed at Iowa. Of course, a lot of people here at WVU were pulling for Calhoun, but seems like he's kind of out of the mix as things stand now. Like I always tell you guys, this thing's fluid, could change in the next hour or so. But right now, seems like this thing is probably down to Ross Hodge and Steve Forbes at WVU. What you guys know, I preferred both of those guys to Calhoun personally. And the more and more I study Ross Hodge, he's definitely my favorite of the two. And if I'm a betting man, I think that he is the one that Ren Baker is targeting. And I think that Steve Forbes would probably be the fallback option. No inside sources. I'm not an insider, nothing like that. I tell you guys that all the time. I just try and curate information and share it, with you guys as it comes out, as reports are available and things like that. But if I'm reading the tea leaves, which is one thing I do try and do here, I think that Ross Hodge is Ren Baker's top target at this moment. And if he can get Ross Hodge, I would not be surprised to see Ross Hodge hired at WVU. But the caveat there is that he's still playing in the NIT. They play tonight at 9 p.m. against Oklahoma State. If they were to win that game, that might throw a wrench into the timeline, because then they wouldn't play again until next week, I think, or early next week, or this weekend, one of the two. I can't remember the NIT timeline, but Ross Hodge, I think, is kind of the number one guy right now, and then Steve Forbes may be the fallback option potentially. We'll see what happens and how it plays out, but that's just kind of the way that I'm feeling about it. And the more and more I look up Ross Hodge, the more I am a fan of him. So just to reiterate a little bit about Ross Hodge, guys, in case you guys hadn't heard me talk about his bio in the past. Been assistant at multiple programs, Southern Miss, Colorado State, Arkansas State, and then, of course, North Texas, where he was the associate head coach alongside Grant McCasland, who was there at North Texas and then is now the head coach at Texas Tech and is doing a great job there. Ren Baker, of course, was the athletic director of North Texas. That's where the tie is. And I think that Ross Hodge, when you look at him, not only does he have the tie with Ren Baker, but he has a lot of the metrics that Ren Baker likes to look for, specifically, really good defense. And I think that, in my opinion, that's probably what ultimately, at the end of the day, didn't allow Jared Calhoun to be the guy that ends up getting this job. It's because of his defensive metrics being so bad throughout his career, and Ren Baker really values defense in a basketball coach. And, the old adage goes, defense wins championships. So not saying Jared Calhoun didn't have a shot, but I think that these other guys were ahead of him because of that. And Ross Hodge, the more that you look at him, the more there is to like about him. And let me just tell you guys a little bit about Ross Hodge and some really good things. I got some articles pulled up we'll go over and talk a bit about Ross Hodge here, because I think, in my opinion, he's the favorite, and with these candidates, he's my favorite as well. That's why I want to kind of highlight Ross Hodge here more than anything. But before he was an assistant, he was coaching at the JUCO ranks, and when he was at the JUCO ranks, he had a phenomenal tenure there. At Paris Junior College, 83-17. Then at Midland College, 63-7. During his entire stint there at the JUCO ranks, 146 wins and only 24 losses. So that's an 86% winning percentage, guys. Phenomenal job there. Like I said, was an assistant under Grant McCaslin at North Texas. And so, I know then the question pops up, well, did he just take over what Grant McCaslin was doing and, kind of inherit that success and just keep it rolling? But from what I've heard and what I understand, a lot of people feel like Ross Hodge was a big key cog in the reason that Grant McCaslin was able to have that success. Not only that, but of course you also have a lot of roster turnover to deal with in today's NIL and transfer portal era, so it's not as easy to just keep something rolling as one would assume. And then additionally, North Texas has moved to the American Athletic Conference, the AAC, versus being in the CUSA when Grant McCaslin was there. So it's a little bit more difficult job now for Ross Hodge, and he has hit the ground running and done a great job with it. His first year there, the 2023 year, they went 19-15, but he had to deal with a ton of injuries that year. Still was able to overcome a bunch of injuries throughout that season, get to 19 wins, and finished with a 10-8 conference record in their first season in the AAC. And in that season, he beat LSU, he beat Northern Iowa, he beat SMU, and he beat Memphis. So, he even beat a power conference club there in LSU, despite having a team that had a lot of injuries, and he was able to get 19 wins out of them. This year has a more healthy team, first year kind of having that. And they go 26-8, 14-4, finish second in the conference behind only Memphis, who made the NCAA tournament. And now you see North Texas performing very well in the NIT also. So 2 years as a head coach at the D1 level, over a 66% winning percentage, 45-23 is his record, including a 24-12 conference record in the American Athletic Conference. So that's just a couple of things to highlight record-wise about Ross Hodge. But let's pull up this article here. This is from a paper here in Texas to talk a little bit more about Ross Hodge. So let me highlight this here as well. Before I pull that up, though, I do want to say I appreciate you guys tuning in, whether you're tuned in on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch. If you're on Facebook or Twitch, I encourage you to come over to the Country Roads Webcast YouTube and subscribe to the channel here. That way you can get access to our pre-recorded episodes, our podcast episodes, the channel member bonus content, all of that good stuff as well. If you're watching on YouTube live or on the playback, you can help us out a ton just by hitting that thumbs up button, giving us a like on the video. Helps a ton with that YouTube algorithm, helps us find more Mountaineer fans like yourself. They can stay up to date on this coaching search as it draws near a conclusion, and of course keep you up to date on the WVU football program throughout the offseason as we approach the Rich Rod 2.0 era, as I plan to do a football live stream later today as well. But let's pull up this article and talk a little bit here more about Ross Hodge. This is from Denton, Texas newspaper here. How Ross Hodge rebuilt the UNT men's basketball team with unconventional style and without sacrificing success. North Texas coach Ross Hodge heard it loud and clear when Penny Hardaway drew a comparison while characterizing the Mean Green a few days ago. The Virginia of our conference was how Hardaway, Memphis's basketball coach, described North Texas, which has earned a reputation for playing tough defense at a deliberate tempo. So obviously the comparison to Virginia there is, when Virginia was rolling and they were really good, they were utilizing that pack line defense, a slower tempo, kind of slowing things down, but they were really, really good on the defensive end and really efficient despite that slow tempo on offense. And that's kind of the style that North Texas has been compared to, which I would be all for, bringing in someone that could do that at WVU and, kind of zig when everybody else is zagging, right? Hodge said, I didn't take it as a slight. When you look at trying to manage a game, controlling tempo, being tough and solid defensively, there are definitely some comparisons. North Texas stands out in the world of college basketball because of that style and the way it has seamlessly maintained the ability to execute it to perfection over the years, particularly this season. The Mean Green returned only one starter, so doing this, with rebuilding a roster again, his first season he had to deal with a ton of injuries, still managed 19 wins. This year only returned one starter, ends up getting 26 wins and nearly winning the American Athletic Conference in only their second year playing in the AAC. Bringing back just 10% of their scoring from a team that played in the NIT last season. They went 12-4 in conference, haven't missed a beat despite all that change. The Mean Green won 6 of their last 7 games. Of course, this is the time of this article. This article's from back in January with their only loss coming against the nationally ranked Memphis team. They pulled away for a 69-60 win over East Carolina that extended their run. North Texas is just one of 7 teams in the country to win a national postseason game in each of the last 4 years. A group that also includes Houston, Kansas, and Baylor. So good company to be in there. And like we said, Grant McCaslin started it. Ross Hodge continued it, but Ross Hodge was a part of that Grant McCaslin staff and was a key cog even when they were having success then. So I really like what Ross Hodge has done. So what's North Texas' secret? Hodge said a big part of it is the Mean Green have no secrets. North Texas has adhered to a set of core principles since former coach Grant McCaslin arrived in the spring of 2017 and hasn't wavered, which I like that. I like the core principles aspect, not wavering from it and doing what you do and, focusing in on it, honing in on it, executing it, and doing it well. That's, a recipe for success no matter where you're at, really. Hodge took over for McCaslin when he left for Texas Tech after the 22-23 season and kept the system in place. He had spent the previous 6 seasons as the associate head coach alongside McCaslin. He says you have to give the players a ton of credit. They're really coachable and bought in. They generally try to do what we ask. An underrated component is the staff continuity we were able to keep. We were able to bring back every single staff member this season outside of Louis, and even he was around for most of the summer. The comfort level of the players knowing exactly what we're teaching helped us be in the position we are now. So got to think he's going to be able to assemble a good staff as well that will buy in to his principles, to this system that he's going to try and bring to WVU if he ends up being the pick. Of course, we don't know if he's going to be the choice right now. I believe he's the favorite in my opinion, but we'll see what plays out. There's always an adjustment process when players join new teams. The learning curve is a little steeper at North Texas because of its approach. The Mean Green implemented the defensive system Mark Adams employed during his time at Texas Tech years ago, which Texas Tech, we know, always a tough defensive team, and Mark Adams did a great job, doing that as well. Mastering the scheme designed to keep the ball out of the paint and the middle of the floor while learning to maintain the level of intensity North Texas plays with can be a challenge. So that's what Penny Hardaway was talking about when he compared them to Virginia, that pack line defense. Nothing gets in the paint. You really pack in that middle, and you don't let anything get inside there. Brennan Lorient figured that out quickly, transferring to North Texas from Florida Atlantic. One small slip up in our defense is broken because of how we rotate. You have to be aware at all times. Defense, a huge part of their success, which, like I've talked about throughout this search, Ren Baker values defense. Defense wins championships, whatever adage you want to say there. Ross Hodge can deliver some defense. The pace North Texas plays at can also be an adjustment for newcomers. The Mean Green were averaging 63 possessions per 40 minutes heading into their game against ECU. That ranked as the 6th most deliberate tempo in the nation. The Mean Green have answered for their approach over and over throughout the years and quite frankly seem a little taken aback by their reputation. We're deceptively slow. Rondell Walker said, we're going to get out and run in transition. Our defense dictates our offense. When we get stops, we get out and run. We play faster than people think. Hodge also pointed out that North Texas's goal was to take good shots and not rush. So it's not necessarily we're going to slow the game down and have a slow tempo just because of that. It's all about finding the good shots, but also if your defense forces turnovers, they're going to get out and run with that as well. So despite having the reputation of a slow tempo, doesn't necessarily mean that it's always that way. It sounds simple enough, but the Mean Greens players have had to adjust to that approach, new roles in a lot of cases at a new school. The fact that North Texas newcomers aren't exactly new to college basketball has certainly helped. Of course, talks a little bit about the players here. I'll scroll past that. One of the players admits he went through an adjustment process when he arrived. There were concepts I had to learn, and my attention to detail had to heighten on defense. I had to learn when to slow down and when to speed up. Bringing in veteran players has helped North Texas successfully navigate the adjustment process with the revamped roster. Those players also cite the bond they have quickly formed while settling into North Texas's unique style of play for their success. So maybe that's something to keep an eye on if it does end up being Ross Hodge, is when West Virginia goes out and rebuilds this roster, bring in some veteran players that can adjust to this defensive style and the style that Ross Hodge would be implementing. The Mean Green are not just tough and a little unconventional in their approach, they're also remarkably balanced. Wright leads North Texas with an average of 13.6 points per game. He ranks 17th in the American in scoring heading into the week. A team like Memphis needs its top 3 or 4 guys to get 15 shots a game to be successful. A team like North Texas, it can be 5 to 8 shots per guy. That makes us tougher to guard. I'll take what we have over what most teams in the country have. I like that as well because, we saw kind of the antithesis of that at WVU this season when Javon Small was having an off night, and it was really hard for West Virginia's offense. They would be scoring droughts, so that really could help combat some of the scoring droughts that have been an issue at WVU, is the fact of having, a balanced style where multiple guys can score the basketball because of the style that you implement on offense that goes hand in hand with your pack line defensive style as well. Hodge needed to sell a whole new batch of players on that approach, teach them his defensive scheme, and hope they'd be able to build on the program's run of success that includes an NCAA tournament win, 3 NIT berths, and an NIT championship all in the last 4 years. That seemed like it would be a tall task a few months ago, especially considering Hodge was replacing most of North Texas's roster while convincing players to join a team that plays somewhat of an unconventional style. And I think that unconventional style really makes him appealing for WVU as well, because you guys have heard me talk in the past. You have to be a little bit different to have success at WVU. Ross Hodge is a little bit different. The Mean Green have pulled it off without a hitch and credit the program's environment for their success. The culture is what got everyone here. We're a bunch of hardworking guys who want to win. Does that not sound like something that would work at West Virginia? A bunch of hardworking guys who want to win, that type of culture. I mean, he's got the blue-collar mentality already. The more and more I read about Ross Hodge, the more and more I like this guy. The Mean Green are just fine with being the Virginia of the AAC, a defensive-focused team that plays a slow pace, spreads the ball around, and most importantly, wins. This is one of the closest teams I've been on. Walker said we're close off the court multiple times this year. Guys have said that this is our last year together because of how close we've gotten in a short period of time. We're playing for each other. So not only do I like the system, but I like the culture that he cultivates as well. The more and more I read on Ross Hodge, the more I like the guy. Let's see here. Let's talk about yet again here this is from a WVSI article. Wanted to highlight this little paragraph about Ross Hodge as well. Then I will get to some of your all's comments and see how you guys are feeling about this. But earlier this season, Hodge broke the program record for most league wins in a coach's first 2 years with 19. So, if you have any doubts that he's just inheriting Grant McCaslin's success, look no further than that right there, because you just saw in the other article, had to rebuild the roster this year, and across his first 2 years, has the most league wins in a coach's first 2 years ever with 19. But I added 5 more to that, bringing the new mark to 24, so kind of obliterated that record. And also, let's not forget, doing it in the AAC versus they used to be in the CUSA. When Grant McCaslin was there, the AAC, a bit more difficult for sure. So, very good to see this right here, and I'm personally sold on Ross Hodge. I don't know about you guys, but I am sold on him, and I really kind of hope that we hear something about Ross Hodge being the choice over the next 24 to 48 hours. We'll see if it plays out, but definitely wanted to highlight him and let you guys know a bit more about him. We had talked about him in the past, but I'd studied more up on him since it looks like he was one of the top guys, and maybe the top guy that Ren Baker was looking at. And I think it's not only due to Ren Baker's relationship with Ross Hodge, having been at North Texas previously, but I think it's a lot of the things we just highlighted there. The defensive style that would work at WVU, being a bit different, a bit more unconventional would work at WVU, and the culture that he can build as well, I think would be a great fit. So I'm not against Steve Forbes. I know a lot of people are super against that. I definitely much prefer Ross Hodge, though, and he is now my new favorite candidate, my new number one. We'll see how it plays out. Like I said, they play at 9 p.m. against Oklahoma State tonight in the NIT. If they were to lose that game, I think we could hear something about this potentially tomorrow. We'll see what happens, though. If they win, that could throw a wrench in things, and we'll have to see how things develop from there. Like I said all along, guys, very fluid, can change minute to minute, can change hour by hour. But for now, looks like we have, 2 guys that are heavily in the mix, according to that report from, 247 that came out late last night, courtesy of Mike Kazaza. Got to credit him. I think other people have been stating this now as well, but he's the first one that I saw have it, and he always does a great job covering these coaching searches, so got to give him credit where it's due because he does a phenomenal job. And like I said, I'm not an insider, guys. I just try and share the reports with you guys and let you guys know my feelings on the candidates and things like that. But Ross Hodge, I think, is one that I'm really sold on at this point for sure. So let me catch up on some of your all's comments, and then won't keep you guys too long. Like I said, I'm going to be back live again later, but had to come with this major update as this search nears its conclusion. Looks like Calhoun's out of the mix. Doesn't appear that Chester Frazier's going to get the job from my understanding. And so it seems like our last two kind of left standing right now are Ross Hodge and Steve Forbes, and we'll see how it plays out from there. But as you guys can tell from this stream, who my favorite is for the job currently. Let's see here. See if I can catch up on some comments here. Drumwolf, that's funny. He says, let's do something totally different. Let's play without a coach next year. Just stand over there on the sidelines anyways. That's funny. That's funny. Channel member Nathan Scott said, I think Steve Forbes is too old. Yeah, definitely something else to keep in mind here is the age difference. Ross Hodge, I think, is, 38 maybe? 35? I mean, he's a bit younger, I think. Oh, sorry, 40. He's in his 40s. My bad. So he's 45. But Steve Forbes, much older, been doing it a little bit longer. Ross Hodge, still young in the profession, especially as a head coach at this level. And I think he's just tip of the iceberg of what he can be. He hasn't reached his potential, and I think he's showing that he has a pretty high ceiling. So I like Ross Hodge, and then you got to wonder, has Steve Forbes reached his ceiling, or is he closer to it than Ross Hodge is? Certainly. So I definitely prefer Hodge of the two, and that's a good point there. Nathan Scott, as you see, Nathan Scott with the WVU football helmet beside his name there on the YouTube chat. If you want to get access to having those helmet badges, the custom emojis, plus all kinds of bonus content, behind-the-scenes content. In football season, you get player grades, snap counts each week, injury reports, depth charts, film reviews, game rewatches. You can do that by becoming a channel member here. Hit the join button in the video description or on the channel homepage. Always appreciate our channel members. They help keep this mic recording and that camera rolling. Can never thank you guys enough, and always try and give back with bonus content. So if you're someone that can't get enough WVU content, always consider becoming a channel member here of the CRW, and we always appreciate that for sure. Drumwolf says, I strongly believe WVU is cursed. Why is it WVU has so much trouble finding a coach? Here's my opinion on that, Drumwolf, because I know a lot of people feel that way. But if you look at the history of Ren Baker's coaching searches, they all go about, nearly the same length. And this one is, shaping up to go the same length as the previous couple that we've seen from Ren Baker. I don't think West Virginia has trouble finding a coach. I think you can make a case that Ross Hodge was maybe Ren Baker's top or near his top behind, McCollum. Once he knew he wasn't going to get McCollum, you could make a case that Ross Hodge was his top target all along, I think. I think what Ren Baker does is Ren Baker will not make a decision, even if someone blows him away in the interview process. Ren Baker has his list, and he wants to interview and speak to all the names on his list before he comes back and makes a decision. We saw that in the football search when we knew Rich Rod was interviewed early on, and then there were other candidates being interviewed, and it went on for multiple days after that, and then, of course, circled back to Rich Rodriguez. I think Ren Baker is just a guy that's very thorough, and he likes to be sure that he's interviewed all the potential candidates for a job before he hones in and makes a decision. Even if he has a certain way that he's leaning already, he's still going to give those other guys the benefit of the doubt and speak to them. And so that's why I think you see Ren Baker's coaching searches all, last about 7-8 days or so. And I think this is going on the 6th day of this one potentially, so falling right in line with that as well. Shaq with a good question. How is he as a recruiter? I would have to look at the classes. I haven't really dove into that specifically, but one thing that I can say is he did rebuild North Texas's roster this year, as we went over a little bit in that article. Lost a ton, only had 10% of their scoring returning, only one returning starter, and went out and got guys, via the transfer portal, veterans that would fit the system, and went from 19 wins to 26 wins. Excellent season in the American Athletic Conference, finishing just behind Memphis, who had an awesome season as well. So I think that proves he's really good as a recruiter also. And I think for him, it's probably more about finding guys that are hard workers, that'll fit the system, kind of similar to what we're seeing Rich Rod do on the football side. And I think by all accounts, if Ross Hodge does end up being, the pick at WVU, you got two guys that kind of have similar mentalities on the football and basketball side, which I like as well. But I think he's very good as a recruiter, Shaq, because the way that he was able to turn that roster around and not only, bring in a ton of new pieces and rebuild the roster, but still improve his win total despite having to do that. So I think that that's impressive. And then, of course, you look at his first season there at North Texas, they were riddled with injuries, and he still managed to reel off 19 wins despite having an injury-riddled roster, which is good to see as well. Shows he can win even when things aren't going, the best, having to fight with one hand tied behind his back, so to speak, right? So that's good as well. Tosh Miller, appreciate you as always. He says, hit that like button. Hey, indeed, Tosh, appreciate that. Yeah, if you guys haven't yet, whether you're watching this live or after the fact in a playback, hit the thumbs up button, like the video, and it really helps this find more Mountaineer Nation. They can find the channel, stay up to date on this coaching search, and of course, stay up to date on all things WVU football as we're consistently covering that here on the channel as well. Shaggy of WVU, so the Hodge guy's mentor is the Texas Tech coach. Not sure I like that. Why not, Shaggy? I mean, Grant McCaslin did phenomenal at North Texas. Now look at what Texas Tech's doing there. They had a great season here as well and, still playing. So, I think Grant McCaslin's a great coach for sure. But, Hodge was good prior to coming to North Texas where he was with Grant McCaslin. But from what I've heard, a lot of people felt like, a lot of the success that Grant McCaslin had at North Texas, Ross Hodge was a key cog in that as well and really helped develop some of the defensive principles that they used. And, of course, Hodge continued that this year at North Texas. So I really do. I like Ross Hodge a lot personally, and I like Grant McCaslin too. So I think that them two being tied together is not necessarily a bad thing in my opinion. Pokemon Kid Entertainment, who's going to be the WVU coach? That's one question that I can't answer for sure. Like I said, I'm not an insider. I don't know. But if I'm reading the tea leaves, I think right now I am leaning towards Ross Hodge. But it seems like Ross Hodge and Steve Forbes are kind of the top two at this moment. And if I had to pick someone, I would say Ross Hodge right now. But we'll see how it plays out, Pokemon Kid. We'll see how it plays out. It's not okay, golf folks. Pokemon Kid for coach. Hey, I do love Pokemon Kid Entertainment. He's always good in here to tune in and chime in and always share some great info. So hey, why not, right? That's funny. I like that. Tar Heel 323 says, wish Beeline was on the list. I've heard a lot of people say that. I think that his age is definitely a concern, but also from what I understand, he's expressed he's done coaching. He's kind of out of it and retired, like we've seen a lot of these older coaches do. They get out of the games. They get out of the game now, with how much the college sport has changed, and I think Beeline falls in line with those and kind of officially retired now. So I think that's why, one reason why he wasn't included along with others. Jacob Bailey said, I don't want Steve Forbes. He did okay in a bad ACC. Good point there, Jacob. I know a lot of people hard against the Steve Forbes thing, which, I understand because, he hasn't had the greatest run at Wake Forest. But personally, I just don't think he's a great fit at Wake Forest. I think you look at his time at ETSU, it was phenomenal. 2 NCAA tournament appearances. They haven't went back since he left. Wake Forest was right on the cusp of making the NCAA tournament this year, by the way. But, if you're asking me who I prefer, I certainly prefer Ross Hodge over Steve Forbes. But I don't think Steve Forbes is a bad coach like everyone is making him out to be necessarily. But I do think Ross Hodge is leagues better, personally, in my opinion. Charles says, need to get going. The portal is open, and that is how we will have to build a roster. All the recruits have gone, making me unsettled. Hope the girls' coach doesn't leave. Yeah, got to hope we hang on to Mark Kellogg. We can't take any more right now. Wish they'd have won that game last night, but still in a phenomenal season, and Mark Kellogg's done an incredible job in his first 2 years. I think this will wrap up in short order, especially if North Texas falls tonight. I think we could hear something tomorrow. And the good thing is, I know the portal opened yesterday, but there is plenty of players in that portal. I saw a report that last year, the day the portal opened, I think it was 200-some players entered the portal. This year, 700 players entered the portal on Monday. So once West Virginia makes this, they're going to have plenty of options to choose from in the transfer portal to build this roster. And one thing that we saw from that article that we looked at about Ross Hodge is he has experience in, turning over a roster and still having a successful season as he did this year. So if he is the pick, I like the way that looks as well. But definitely do need to get into that portal, Charles. That is a good point for sure. Do you think the other coaches are seeing the terrible officials in the Big 12 and they don't want to deal with it costing them wins in the Big 12? No, I don't feel that way, Drum Wolf. The Big 12 refs are god-awful. I mean, I do agree with you there. But I think that personally, you look at some of the other coaches that were on the list, and most of them that decided to go elsewhere went home. And, Ben McCollum is from Iowa. Nico Medved's from Minnesota. So I think that that's more so the case than anything conference affiliated, although I know the Big Ten right now is a little bit more prestigious than the Big 12 if you ask the media. But I think that Ren Baker's had his list all along. I think he's had some favorites all along, and I would not be surprised if Ross Hodge was near the top of that list all along due to the previous relationship, and then the more I've learned about him, the more I think he would be a great fit as well. So I think it's more so those things than anything to do with the Big 12 officials, even though they aren't the greatest by any means. Trey Edwards, also channel member here. Appreciate you, Trey. Says, keep Forbes away. I don't want him. I think that you're in the majority there. A lot of people really don't want Forbes, and I don't necessarily see that happening. Like I said, it's a possibility, don't get me wrong, but I think if Ross Hodge is offered the job, I think he would accept it. I think you only get to Forbes if you don't land Ross Hodge. That's just my personal opinion, guys. Reading the tea leaves, no inside information on that, but I think Ross Hodge is the number one candidate personally. Shaggy says, I could see Hodge being a hire that will help us in the transfer portal. Right there with you, Hodge. I think so too. The more and more I learn about Ross Hodge, the more and more I like this guy a lot. I really do. Pokemon Kid Entertainment says, I think he hires Hodge. Hey, fingers crossed, because if these are the final two, that's definitely my preference here as well. Rick Weiss with a great point here. Appreciate you, Rick. Fans thought the sky was falling when Beeline was hired because he wasn't a big name. That turned out okay. Hey, that's right. And that's one thing I've tried to, reiterate throughout this entire process is we all have our personal favorites. We all have our opinions. And, at the end of the day, though, I don't know as much as Ren Baker. Ren Baker studied this and knows it way more than I do. And also, Ren Baker has a great track record of hiring coaches, especially basketball coaches. So at the end of the day, you got to trust whatever name he brings in, even if it's one that we all didn't have at the top of our list or one that we all didn't prefer. So, that's kind of something to keep in mind, and is a great point, Rick, for sure. And I think, whoever it is, the fan base will rally behind them, especially once they start winning. Then definitely you could for sure get behind them for sure. Mark the Silvershank. Hey, maybe you have to go root for McNeese then. Looks like Huggins is a candidate up there at McNeese. I just don't see it. I don't see it as far as Huggins being better than any of these names, especially in today's, NIL transfer portal era. You look at Huggins' last few seasons at WVU, they were not very good. The past couple of last seasons he had. Love Huggins to death, not trying to hate on the guy, but, it is a different day and age now. Maybe he goes to McNeese State, proves me wrong, has success there, but Huggs isn't on the list. He's never been on the list. He's nowhere near the list here at WVU this go-round. Just the facts there, man. But he was mentioned as a candidate at McNeese State yesterday, so he could get back into the coaching ranks. We'll see what happens there for sure, and if he does, I wish him well. McNeese rebuilt Will Wade's career. They maybe could do the same for Huggins and get him back into it, and would like to see him have, a happy end, happier end than it was here at WVU. A guy that's a Hall of Famer deserves a better ending than that. So, hopefully he does get another job and rides off into the sunset in a better way. Rick Weiss says Hodge has done a great job at North Texas. 100% agree for sure. Charles says, go to Boston, get Missoula. Brother, I think that me or you have as good of a chance of getting the job as Joe Missoula. Joe Missoula is not going to leave the Boston Celtics to come to WVU. That's insane. That's never going to happen. And also, Joe Missoula has stated, multiple times since he left Fairmont State that he doesn't really like coaching in college. He doesn't really like the aspect of recruiting. He wanted to get to the pros, and now that he's in the pros, I don't think he's going to leave there either. Apologies for my dog barking. My wife may have just got home from the gym if the mic's picking that up. Drumwolf said, what happened to JJ in the game last night? WVU looked terrible and did not play like they should have. Yeah, the defense was there for most of the game, but bad night to have one of their worst offensive nights of the season. Not the ending to JJ's career that we wanted, but still one of the greatest. Arguably she's up there in the debate for the greatest women's basketball player ever at WVU. And you still got to credit her sticking around through her career, being a 2,000-point scorer, and staying through multiple coaching changes. Not the end that we wanted in that game, and like I said, terrible time to have one of our worst offensive games of the season, but still a phenomenal season and a phenomenal career for JJ. So I can't hate on her despite it being an off night for her and the team. Still think that Mark Kellogg can bring great success to the WVU women's team in the future, like he has over these past couple of seasons for sure. Shaggy says he's only been a head coach for 2 seasons, not much of a body of work to say he's done a great job. Well, at the Division I level, yes, but he also, like I've said before, was a key cog in the success they had under Grant McCaslin. But look at his success before at the JUCO ranks: 83-17 at one stop, 63-7 at another, 146 wins and only 24 losses. So that's multiple years there. That's 5 years of the JUCO ranks, and he only lost 24 games in 5 years, 86% winning percentage. So that body of work speaks volumes. And then you add into it the 2 years at North Texas here at the D1 level, one of which he was dealing with injuries, still managed to get 19 wins. This year completely overhauled the roster, finished second in the AAC. That's with them transitioning to that new conference across his first 2 years as well. So I think the body of work is very impressive, Shaggy, in my opinion. But, like I said, that's just my opinion. Not going to downplay yours either. We're all allowed to have one. Shaq, does the portal open more than once for basketball or only right now? Good question, Shaq. I really don't know for sure about the basketball. I know the football has the 2 transfer portal windows, but basketball I'm not 100% sure of if it's open now and then just open for a certain period. Well, I don't know enough about that. I'd have to look into that more, Shaq. That's a good question, man. The Virginia kid has a do not contact tag on him. Oh, interesting. I hadn't heard that, Trey. I was hoping that we would be, one of the places that he could potentially end up. McNeely, in reference there, the kid transferring from UVA, would love for West Virginia to end up with him. But if he has a do not contact tag, maybe that's because he's already knowing where he's going to end up, which is interesting. We'll see how that plays out. But I didn't know that. Thanks for that info, Trey, for sure. WVU Diehard 23 must have popped in later. But no, Calhoun is believed to no longer really be in the conversation, according to the latest update from Mike Kazazas, who I got to credit with that one. Sounds like he's going to stay at Utah State and sign that extension that was on the table for him. So no, Calhoun seems to be kind of off the table for West Virginia right now. Like I said, this is fluid. Things could change for sure, but we'll see what happens. Thanks, Shaggy. Thanks for tuning in, man. Have a good day. I'm going to wrap up here before too much longer, just trying to catch up on these comments here. Appreciate everyone tuning in and chiming in for sure. Tosh Miller said, out of everyone left, I like Alan Huss. I know Alan Huss's name was mentioned early on. Alan Huss from High Point. Seems like, he's behind, some of these others. Like I said, from the latest 247 report, standing tall at the top of the list. The guys we're talking about in this video, Ross Hodge and Steve Forbes. I may prefer Huss over Forbes personally, but it sounds like Forbes is a little bit higher on the list. So I think that Ross Hodge is definitely in play, and I would not be surprised to see it end up being Ross Hodge. He's my favorite of the two, but we'll have to see how it plays out. Everything WVU Football Podcast. What's going on, man? Good to see you in here. I haven't seen you in a while. Everyone check out his YouTube channel as well. Calhoun has signed a new deal with Utah State. Makes him the highest paid coach in the mid-majors. Is that now official? Let me pull that up and share that if so. But definitely, let's see here if I can find that really quickly on a quick Google search and share that info for sure. I knew that was probably coming. Here it is, John Rothstein. So indeed, what we were sharing here in this video is indeed true. Calhoun out of the mix, just like I reported here, courtesy of shared the report from Mike Kazaza that shared it first. Utah State's Jared Calhoun finalizing a deal that will make him the second highest paid coach in the Mountain West, behind San Diego State's Brian Dutcher. Led the Aggies to 26 wins in NCAA tournament appearance this season. So he was not lying to the guy he saw on the plane that we talked about in a previous stream. He is indeed staying at Utah State, out of the running. So this is indeed the truth here, that it looks like the final two for West Virginia right now, Ross Hodge and Steve Forbes. You guys let me know in the comments if you didn't get a chance to watch this live. Who's your preference there? I'm a big proponent of Ross Hodge. Hopefully I've sold you on him throughout this stream as we've highlighted a lot of good things about him. I know some people popped in here late. But if you did, go back, rewind this, watch it from the beginning, because I think that you'll be sold on Ross Hodge more, just like I have been the more and more I learned about him. I'm really hoping that Ross Hodge is the pick for WVU. If that ends up being the case, I'll come back and talk about it then. But I will be live again later today to talk football in another live stream, as we're believed to get another press conference from Rich Rod at some point today. Once that happens, I'll try and watch it, jot down some notes, and jot down some notes from whatever assistant we get as well, and come back and talk some football with you guys as well. Hey, what's going on, Golden Blue Goggles? Appreciate you hopping in, man. Always love that screen name for sure. You guys know we throw on the Golden Blue glasses here and keep things optimistic on the CRW for sure. Jose Clay, is there still a mystery candidate? From my understanding, not right now. The latest report, it seems like it's these kind of are the final two right now as we're getting close to a decision. I think that Ross Hodge is number one and Steve Forbes is number two. Don't know that for sure. That's just my personal opinion, and that's how I'd rank them. We'll see what happens for sure. Linda Skidmore, Hodge teams as guard/wing center. It's a lot easier finding great players 6'6" and under than 7-footers. Another great point there. I think that his style would fit WVU. The players that he recruits would fit at WVU. And one thing that I've talked about throughout this process is that you really have to be a little bit different to be successful at WVU, and what Ross Hodge does is a bit more unconventional. It's a bit different, and it would work here at WVU. And most importantly, it prioritizes defense, which defense wins championships, and I would love to see that style at WVU. But we'll see how it shakes out, guys, but that's where we stand currently. Just to recap, Jared Calhoun out of the mix. He's signing an extension to stay at Utah State. Looks like West Virginia is down to potentially Ross Hodge or Steve Forbes unless something changes and something crazy happens, something unexpected happens. But Mike Kazaza reporting that, and he does a great job covering these things. So got to take his word for gold there in this. And personally, I'm pulling for Ross Hodge now at this point. He's now my number one candidate, and we'll see what happens. If you guys want to watch him, you can watch him tonight in the NIT at 9 p.m. as they take on Oklahoma State, and you can watch his North Texas Ball Club play a little bit. But appreciate everyone that tuned into this live. We'll try and keep you guys up to date on this coaching search. Like I said, been live every day, plan to continue that until this thing wraps up. And I will be live again later today, most likely, to talk a little bit of football. So come back and tune in for that one as well. If you're on Facebook or Twitch, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube so you get notified when we go live. You get the pre-recorded episodes, the podcast episodes, all of that good stuff. Before you head out here, if you're watching on YouTube, whether you're live or watching this after the fact on a playback, hit the thumbs up button. Help us out with that algorithm. If you didn't get a chance to chat with us live, throw your thoughts in the comments. Always appreciate that interaction there, so we try and grow this CRW community throughout Mountaineer Nation. But I'll talk to you guys again soon. We'll see where this WVU basketball coaching search ends up. Looks like it's drawing near a conclusion, and hopefully in the next 24 hours or so, we'll have who our coach is going to be for the upcoming WVU basketball season to replace Darren DeSleeze, as I've heard some people call him, and I think that's kind of fitting. But nonetheless, excited, really have enjoyed covering this search as it's developed, and can't wait to see it come to its conclusion, and can't wait to chat some football with you guys here in the near future as well. Having said that, as always, I'm Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.